Let's be real. Doesn't your brain sometimes feel like it needs a user's guide? Well, today, we're going to pop the hood and take a look at one of its most critical parts, the hard drive. You know it as your memory. Oh, you know you have. We all have. Or what about when you can't for the life of you remember the name of someone you just met? It happens to everyone, and it's not a sign your brain is broken. It's just proof that memory is a super dynamic, complex process, not some perfect video recorder that captures every single moment. At its core, your memory works a lot like a computer. It all boils down to three basic stages. First up is encoding. That's the input, like typing something on a keyboard. Then you've got storage, which is basically hitting the save button. And finally, there's retrieval. That's when you open that file back up to use it. Every single memory you have, big or small, goes through this exact process. Now, it's easy to think of memory as just being for school exams or winning a trivia night, right? But it is so much more fundamental than that. It's like the invisible architecture holding up your entire life. I mean, really think about it for a second. Without memory, you wouldn't recognize your own front door. Simple habits like brushing your teeth? Impossible. Complex skills like driving a car? Forget about it. But even deeper than that, memory is what creates your identity. It's the sum of all your experiences that makes you, well, you. It's how we learn from our past and hopefully not make the same mistakes again and again. So where does a memory even begin? It all starts with step one, encoding. To even have a memory, your brain first has to notice something out in the world and basically decide, hey, this is important enough to pay attention to. The thing to really get here is that encoding isn't passive. It's a very active process. Your brain is getting bombarded with millions of bits of information every single second, so it has to be picky. It takes the sights and sounds and feelings you experience and translates them into a kind of neural code that it can actually work with and, fingers crossed, store away. And what's super cool is how we can encode the same info in totally different ways. For instance, there's acoustic encoding, which is all about sound. Think of remembering a catchy jingle or that cake rhymes with lake. But then there's semantic encoding, which goes way deeper. That's about understanding the actual meaning behind the words, like knowing what a lake is, not just what it sounds like. And right there, that's the key to better learning. If you really want to remember something, don't just memorize the words. Focus on what they mean. Connecting new stuff to things you already understand, that is the absolute secret sauce for building a strong, lasting memory. Okay, so you've successfully gotten some information into the system. Awesome. Now what? Well, your brain can't just leave that file sitting on the desktop. It needs to be filed away properly. And that brings us to the storage phase. Storage is all about making things stick. It's the bridge that takes a fleeting thought and turns it into a lifelong memory. But here's the catch. Not all storage is the same. Information has to pass through a few different levels, a few different stores to really have a chance of lasting. So let's take a look at this. First, everything hits your sensory memory. This is like a spark. It's super brief, gone in a flash. But if you pay attention, it gets promoted to your short-term memory. Think of this like your brain's RAM or a sticky note. It's limited and it's temporary. But if that info is important enough, it gets the final upgrade into the massive, permanent library that is your long-term memory. And here is the real bottleneck in the whole system. Your short-term memory is tiny. It can generally only hold about 5 to 9 pieces of information at a time. That's why you can handle a new phone number, but trying to remember a whole grocery list without writing it down is tough. And it gets worse. Not only is the capacity small, but the clock is ticking. If you're not actively doing something to keep that information in your head, it'll just vanish in under 30 seconds. It's a very, very leaky bucket. But hey, don't despair. You can fight back against these limits. 2 really powerful tricks are rehearsal, which is just repeating information over and over, and chunking, which means grouping things into meaningful units. For instance, it's way easier to remember the number 1492 as the year 1492 than as 4 random digits. All right, let's get to the final stage, the part where all this work pays off. You've gotten the information in, you've stored it, but now comes the moment of truth. Can you actually find it when you need it? This is retrieval. This is the open file part of the process. And here's something that might just blow your mind. A lot of what we call forgetting isn't the memory being deleted forever, it's often just a retrieval failure. The file is still on the hard drive, you've just misplaced the shortcut to get to it. So we pull information out in a few different ways. There's recall, which is like pulling an answer out of thin air for an essay test. Then there's recognition, which is way easier. That's just identifying something you've seen before, like picking the right answer on a multiple choice test. And then there's relearning. That's that cool feeling of picking up an old skill, like riding a bike, way faster the second time around. Whew, okay, that was a lightning tour of your mind's hard drive. So before we finish up, let's do a quick little brain check with a quiz, just to make sure all these ideas made it safely into your long-term memory. So one last time, let's revisit that core system. It all kicks off with encoding, that's the input. Then it has to move to storage, the save function. And the whole point is retrieval, the output. If any one of those stages fails, the whole memory process just breaks down. All right, quiz time. So you get a new phone number, and you say it to yourself over and over so you can dial it. What is that little trick called? Think about it. That's it. It's called maintenance rehearsal. You're not trying to understand the deep meaning of the number, you're just using pure repetition to keep it from slipping out of that leaky bucket of short-term memory. Okay, last one for you. You're taking a multiple choice test. You see 4 options, and you just have to pick the right one. You don't have to create it from scratch. What kind of retrieval are you using? Exactly. It's recognition. Your brain's job is so much easier because the correct answer is literally staring you in the face. All you got to do is spot it, which is way less work than recalling an answer out of the blue. And that brings us to our final thought for the day. We've laid out pretty clearly that memory works in these 3 stages. But that begs a huge question, right? What are the secret mechanisms that actually push a memory from being just a fleeting sensation to a short-term thought, and then, finally, into that permanent archive of your mind? Well, that's a story for another time. Thanks for joining me.